prepare for trouble.
Make it double.
This is the Team Pocket Podcast. Welcome back. As you can see, we've really revamped here. Everything looks way better, except for everything besides Laliette's camera. That looks quite a bit better. But otherwise, everything should be the same here. Welcome back to the second week of us doing this. The first episode went pretty well. People seem to love it. And so we were excited to keep making more. Welcome, Laliette. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited to talk about things that are not going to make people happy. We're going to make people very happy. It just depends on which side of the fence you align.
Yeah, 100%. You know what? I'm sorry, but if you're a big fan of Nidoking, I'm not saying you were going to talk about it, but we might just to make you a little upset. How has your week been in Pokemon?
Pretty good. I decided finally, I broke down and I shelled out $92 USD into the game to get some more packs because there's just a lot of decks I wanted to play, things I wanted to mess around with that you can't do because the game will give you like 2 stage 1s and 2 stage 2s, but not a single one of the basic Pokemon for that line, and many different combinations of those issues where you just have like a 1-1-1 line of Gyarados, but you really want a 2-2-2 line to be able to play the deck.
I don't know. Every time I open a pack, it's like, you've got 2,886 cards. I do not yet have Horsey, the 1 diamond starter that evolves into Seadra. I don't even think it's good, but it's still like, I want it. Come on, man. I need it by now. And I've put in I did 720 exactly. I don't remember how much USD that was. But 720 Pokegold. Because you could buy like the 4th pack like 6 times or something like that. It gives you exactly what you need. So that's what I did. And I do have almost a full collection. I'm missing about 12 cards right now. And they're all hard cards to get. So, you know, who knows how long it'll take me to get there. But yeah, overall, I've got more experience with the game. Some of my opinions have changed. Like the first week I was convinced Vaporeon was bustedly powerful. And now I'm like, Vaporeon's not very good. I like Vaporeon still, but there's definitely a difference between fighting AI decks or, you know, whatever, the decks they put in for lower level stuff where the HP pools are just lower and the damage is lower, where cards that can heal themselves like Vaporeon really shine. And then you start going up against harder stuff for real players and they're dropping Pikachu EXs on you. And I'm like, well, this card needs 3 energy to still die in 1 shot. No, thank you. But yeah, overall, it's been a great week for me in the game. And
I still have no Pikachu EX, by the way, on either of my 2 accounts. And I've opened up somewhere around 140, 150 packs between those 2 accounts.
That's crazy. I have 1 Pikachu EX normal, and then my second one is actually a full art 3-star one. So I got lucky, but I just wanted 2 of them. That was all. You can see it in my pack opening video. So we're gonna go over a couple topics here. I don't know if I want to edit and put like our topics here, but I'll probably do actually this one. I think I'm gonna do bookmarks. So I will try to kind of keep an idea so you could jump ahead to see exactly where you want to be. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a new mechanic that is, I think we haven't agreed on whether it's a bug or it's intentional or if it's intended or not or whatever, but we have discovered, I mentioned it last week as like a aside, and it didn't really click that much with me because it happened one time, and I don't think, even though if Laliette believed me, but we found out you can indeed attack on turn 1 in Pokemon TCG Pocket. How did you find this out, Laliette?
I found this out from you when you told me that you did it with like a Squirtle or something in your Blastoise deck. And you're right, I didn't really believe you, but I didn't think you were lying either. So I was like, well, let me try it with Articuno, right? And so I started playing. I don't think I'm the first person to come up with this idea, but you don't need to be a big-brained, great deck builder to think there is no mulligan in this game. So if you play an Articuno in your deck, you will draw it every time, and you'll start with it. You flip a coin on Misty, you get 2 heads, you can attack for 40. You get 3 heads, you can attack for 80 on turn 1, and it sure does work.
And what's crazy is that I think there's like a misconception because everyone that's played Pokemon knows you can't attack on turn 1. That's just kind of always been a thing because you know, there's like double energy cards. Can you attach energy turn 1 in normal Pokemon? Okay, so they kind of seem to have flipped it, but because you could just normally can't attack turn 1, people just kind of assume that you couldn't attack turn 1 on here. But the only card that allows you to attack on turn 1 in the game is Misty. There's no other card that puts, like, you could put an energy on with Brock, but you need to either have Golem or Onyx. Onyx needs 3 energy to attack. Golem is a stage 2, so it's not possible. Lieutenant Surge doesn't generate energy, he moves it around. So the only way to actually generate energy and attack on turn 1 is with Misty. And so, yeah, you don't get any energy generated, but if Misty goes off and you get a couple heads, you can attack with any water Pokemon in the game on turn 1. And we actually have a deck here that I think we want to look at to kind of highlight here. I got to switch my scene.
Quick caveat. It has been about 10-12 years since Pokemon TCG, the physical card game, allowed you to attack turn 1, but the game did originate allowing you to attack turn 1. But for recent memory, it's not been a thing. And when you don't allow energy to be generated in pocket, it would lead you to think that you couldn't attack first, but indeed you can.
Yeah, so I guess before we even talk about this deck, what is your, I want to each of us give our take on the turn 1 attacking. What do you think about that overall?
I think it's bad for the game. I don't know, like you said, if it's a bug, if it's an oversight, if it's purposeful, right? If it's purposeful, I question the design because it limits design of any other energy generating cards that are, that come out at all, right? You don't really want to ever play a card that says, you get 2 energy immediately. I want that to be able to be a card where you pay a high enough cost. But currently, the way it is, would just be an OP card no matter what the cost was. I might even be willing to give up 1 point to the opponent to have 2 energy on turn 1. So like that's how powerful being able to do this is. The odds aren't super high, right? You do have to flip coins, etc. I made a post on Reddit. It did not go well. People really feel like it's perfectly fine because half the time Misty does nothing. And I would like you to bunk that when you share your opinion, but I do think for the safety of design space, that we need to make it so that for whatever reason, either Misty can't be played on turn 1, or you can't attack on turn 1, or however they make the change, so that there's not one typing that has a huge advantage of being the only type that is able to access turn 1 attacks.
Yeah, so the main issue is it limits design space so much. So I think there's 2 solutions they could do right now, in my opinion, right? There's the obvious, they can nerf Misty, where they could, instead of making Misty, I don't know, maybe Misty can't be played on turn 1 or something. That's like a really unelegant fix. Maybe they make it so Misty only ever flips 1 coin and it's binary, does it work or does it not? I think that's a fair price to pay for a card that can be used to attack on turn 1. But I think the issue with nerfing Misty, which probably should be nerfed anyway, versus the mechanic, is that the mechanic is what's limiting design space. Misty is just a powerful card. But if you always have it so you can attack on turn 1, like you said, it's just they can't make any cards that ever put energy on something that, like, they have to have cards that are on Brock's level, right? They can't have a Brock that just puts an energy on anything. Or they can't have a Brock that even puts an energy on a Geodude, because suddenly they print too strong of a Geodude down the line. It's just like, you have to make such narrow cards to skirt around this rule, because being able to go first, attack first, well, also, like, you already have an advantage because you get a red card them a lot of times, because sometimes they'll have 4 cards in your hand. They already have to discard a card just because you're there. You already get to go first, and if you get to attack first, you get to draw first, you get to set up first. There's just no downside. And Misty, the idea that Misty is okay because 50% of the time it doesn't do anything, that's like, if you're flipping a coin on turn 1 to decide who wins the game, that's not a fun card game. It's like, yeah, 50% of the time it does nothing, but it's probably the most powerful card in the game. And it always does nothing 50% of the time. And it's still one of the most powerful cards in the game. The fact that it also could allow you to instantly win, like if you get Misty to go off on turn 2 or turn 3, it feels like you can instantly win. But on turn 1, if you get even 1 energy from Misty on turn 1, and you can attack on turn 1 with something, that's already powerful. But if you're going with like the Articuno EX, and even if you get 1 energy on turn 1, and turn 2 you're attacking for 40, which is not what the card is designed to do, I feel like what it does is it takes the amount of what the game is designed to do, and it kind of like breaks it. It's like the cards weren't, I don't feel like, designed with being able to attack on turn one. And I think it is a bigger issue with in general with the mechanic as opposed to Misty. Although I would like to see both addressed, if I'm being completely honest. I think Misty is too big of an advantage over all other types. I can't see why you would want to run almost anything without Misty.
So yeah, I have two things I quickly want to go over, but first I want to ask you before I reply to what you said, because I have like this adding percentages points to winning, right?
Mhm.
That's like one of the way that people evaluate cards, because like that's what you do in poker, right? So like certain hands have certain odds of winning, etc. So you use effective value. You could do that in Pokemon, especially with these tiny decks as well. If anything gives you larger than a 5% additional chance to win by playing it, then that's amazing. But with Misty, how do you feel if it was just Misty allows you to attach one water energy to one water Pokemon? It's still better than all of the other energy-based supporters, etc. Is that too good? Is it not good enough? What do you think?
I think so here, this is what's funny to me. It's obviously too good because they have another card called Brock, which is just worse than that. So if the idea is you want cards to be roughly equal, unless fighting has such a huge advantage in quality of Pokemon, where it's like you're willing to have weaker support, but that's not the case. Most of like the Staryu EX, right? Articuno EX, the water Pokemon tend to be better anyway already. So Misty, if it just was guaranteed to add one water to any water type, would be too good, I still think, in my opinion. They would have to, if they narrowed it where it was add one water to like two specific Pokemon, I think it would probably be too bad, where it'd be in the Brock category where it's not fun. So it's a really hard card to balance. I think they might just, if they change cards, I think Misty is the first card that gets nuked into unplayability. I think they might just make it like you need to put this on a Froakie or a Star, not even a Starmie, because that might accidentally be good. Like they'll make it like you have to put it on Greninja or something, which is still like fine or whatever, because that's like a good card, but it's like not really what you want to be doing with it. But I think that's probably what they're gonna do. But yeah, as far as like,
They don't.
yeah, I hope they don't too. Misty's a fun card.
I've thought about like we keep coin flips, but we set a ceiling, because one of the issues with Misty is the high end, right? When you get 3 in a row, that's problematic. Any more than 3 probably doesn't matter in any water deck. I mean, it could matter with Blastoids, but by the time you get a stage 2 down, you have additional turns to play those other 2 energy you need for the Blastoids.
What would you think about what would you think about a nerfed Moltres EX version of the ability, where Misty always flips 2 coins and you get energy equal to the amount of heads?
Oh, it's better than it currently is on some levels, but I would have to like run the math, because like honestly, off the top of my head, that sounds like it actually might be like a small increase in
You think so?
the
Okay.
consistency, even though like it squishes like the really powerful end. Because like right now, like 12.5% of the time in this Articuno deck, you get to just attack with Blizzard like turn 1. Like it's kind of crazy. Like that shouldn't be a thing.
There's nothing that could compete against that. You can't even stage
Of
2
course, you
fast enough to
draw
have
the
HP.
Misty, right? If you have the Misty turn 1, 12.5% of the time, you will be able to attack Blizzard, which will donk a lot of Pokemon. A lot of, if you're playing a stage 2 deck and you have a 60 HP, 70 HP Pokemon, then you're done for.
And that's already like a risk if you go, if you're going second, you still have like kind of this. That's why I think Misty needs a nerf, because even if you go second, you could still high roll on Misty and attack them before, so I still think Misty is a problem, but I think attacking on turn 1 is, I don't feel like that's what the game is designed for. Because if someone just has a bad draw with their basics and then suddenly they just have they have a 60 HP basic that their deck is built like Abra, but then suddenly boom, they don't even get a chance to do anything. They're just dead before their first turn,
Absolutely. So there was a tournament that me and Platt were going to play in, and this was the deck I was going to play in that tournament. Unfortunately, the way like the time got voted for, it ended up being exactly when we record the podcast, and our loyalty is to you guys first, so we're doing the podcast. There'll be more tournaments. It'll be fun. But the reason I was going to play this is because I think this if you're going to play in a tournament, this deck has the highest percentage chance to win the tournament. Now, not to do good in the tournament, because there's like a 25% chance that you're going to be like second often in all of your games in a double elimination, and you're going to end up having to just play a long drawn out game while only having 2 Pokemon in your deck, and they're going to have a chance to beat you, right? So some amount of the time, like 15% of the time, you don't even get to play the game. You're just playing a worse version of the game than other people. But by that same odds, 15% of the time, you just get to run hot and stomp everybody, right? So regardless of your skill level, you don't need a lot of skill to flip coins and to attack turn 1 or 2, right? With, you know, you're guaranteed the Articuno in this deck every single time. You have a couple cool cards to play around things, right? Sabrina's super powerful, where if they do have a couple energy on somebody, you can switch out of that and be able to, you know, attack something else, make it so that they're not able to attack your Articuno while you build up a second Articuno. You have Giovanni, so sometimes you need to be able to two-shot a Pokemon. I'm not sure of any exact instances of that, but it is in there for 10 extra damage, because that is going to matter upon occasion, because Charizard has 180, which is the only Pokemon that really matters, but of course he's weak to Articuno, so you do 100 twice against him instead of just 80 twice.
If this deck becomes meta, I am going to start running Aerodactyl, and then you're going to have your one basic get shuffled into your deck and lose. But
that actually is awesome.
I think like one thing to import, if anyone's asking questions like, why are you running hand scopes? Why are you run? It's like, we're running this because it's not a Pokemon. That's it. The only reason it's in here is because it's not a basic Pokemon. And there's just not that enough items to like make. I mean, seeing your opponent's hand, I think hand scope in 99% of situations is a bad card. I think it might only be good with red card, and then half the time or more you use hand scope, you see you don't want to red card them. So it's like, you're like, woo, you know.
You are absolutely right. That's kind of how it plays out. But hand scope does make red card better. And once again, it's not a Pokemon, and I don't believe there's a better item you could play over hand scope, since you're already going to be playing red card.
Like, there are some situations you're going to use speed. There's some situations you're going to use potion. Red card, hand scope, I think are definitely more niche, but it's possible. But I mean, and then the supporters are insane. Having I think 8 supporters is high, but I think it's worth it. I think I don't like going above 6, because you can only play 1 a turn, so you're not going to be able to play all of them. But again, it's just to at least draw one of them. Misty, like if you don't have a Misty, you need a Professor to find the Misty. And once you have a, you know, a Misty, you still, if the first one doesn't work, you want to always have access to a Sabrina. You might want access to a Giovanni, but overall, I mean, it's a simple deck. You don't have to put that much thought into what the idea of it is here, which I'm so excited to build this, because this looks like meme central, but in a way it's a cheese deck for sure. But I'm very excited to play it. I
played 8 games of this, right, with this deck. I played a mirror match twice. I want to be clear, and I won both of them. But I was 75% over 8 games, small sample size. But the point is, even if this was a 50% win rate deck, has an abusive mechanic, that would still be problematic to the meta.
Yeah, I think, like, yeah, we could boil it down again. I'm talking in circles now, but I think the core idea of being able to attack on turn 1 just kind of fundamentally breaks the design space that they could do. Because what's your disadvantage to going on turn 1? You draw a card, right? You get to do everything first. You have the only advantage to going second is that you get to attach an energy first and then attack first, is like ideally. But if they ever add a card that lets you add a colorless energy, suddenly you're attacking with Farfetch'd on turn 1, right? Farfetch'd on turn 1 before they go, that card smacks. It's 40 damage. By the time if they have Pikachu and you're going first, you still beat it. You hit it for 40, they put an energy on. You hit it for 40, they put the second energy on, then you die. So I'm wrong there. But the point is, like, there's
you still win points wise, right? Because then you come up and you only have to hit for 40 to take 2 points against the
exactly. And you only used 1 energy, and it wasn't even your attached energy for a turn. So then on the second turn, you already start building up something else. You can't, there's so many cards you can't make if you allow attacking on turn 1, because it becomes like a first turn kill meta, right? You're always just trying to find a way to do the first turn kill before your opponent has a chance, because this isn't like Magic. You don't have Force of Will. You don't have 0 mana counter spells in this format to like interact with them, right? To stop them from doing stuff. I think you need first turn kills should not be a thing in Pokemon, in my opinion. There's no interaction in the game. For games that have interaction, first turn kills I think are acceptable, although not fun. But Pokemon doesn't have interaction in that way.
And just to wrap up everything, the other reason that this is annoying is because it's hard to get 2 Articunos. So like Plat spent a good amount of money on the game, doesn't have 2 Articunos, right?
I have 0.
I got lucky. Yeah. I do have 2 Articunos, but it's 500 pack points, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means you have to open how many packs?
Well, it's 100? one card per pack. So, or sorry, it's one. Yeah. It's 1 point per card, 5 points per pack. So yeah, 100 packs.
So it's 100 packs you have to open before you could get one of these. So like if this was also on a 2-star Pokemon, something closer to like a Kangaskhan, sorry, then that would be a little bit better because at least there'd be more access. But now this is more of a pay to win kind of thing where it's like, only people who either get lucky or, pay to win get to have access. So we're going to move on, I believe, to another deck that we're going to go over.
Yeah, we're going to go over 2 decks. One, I kind of hope they buff the pack points. I feel like it's 1 point per card feels too low for maybe I'm wrong. Maybe with the collection system. We'll do a different episode about that, I guess. But yeah, so in the tournament we were in, I went through the deck list there and I picked 2 essentially random deck lists. I just went through ones that look kind of interesting. So, sorry, this isn't to like spoil deck lists. These are all public. I'm not like putting someone's strategy out there before the tournament. Their tournament's already happened. It's happening as we're recording this, so we don't need to worry about that. But we just want to look at these are people that there's cash money on the line. It's like $20 or something. It's not much, but these people want to win. So what are people bringing where they want to win? And we're going to kind of review the decks, give our opinions on it and how strong we think they are. And yeah, so here is the first one here. This is a Pidgeot Arbok deck. So what are your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I really like the mechanics that this has. So this is like a pseudo control deck where what you're controlling is what Pokemon is active and whether or not it can retreat. So I mean, it's pretty simple as far as what that could do. So just to kind of go over the cards real quick, Pidgeotto can choose, is that correct, any Pokemon on the bench and pull it up, or is it just forcing the switch? It's forcing the switch.
So Victory Bell is the one that pulls. Pidgeot is literally Sabrina, but you could do it every single turn.
So I apologize. Like you said, Sabrina. So it's not quite as powerful as I originally said, but you can switch, get a different Pokemon up every turn, right, from a Poke ability. And then Arbok for 2 energy does, how much damage does that say?
60 damage on Arbok. So you're sacrificing 10 for, instead of like double, whatever, fighting of 70, this is a 60, so 10 damage less. But they can't switch out.
10 damage less, but it stops you from retreating the next turn with that Pokemon. Of course, you can evolve out of it, but there is no switch in the game right now, so I don't know of another way to get out of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, if there was like a card like Switch, that would get around it, but X Speed doesn't, because it stops the retreat button from working, and that's right now the only way. Koga would allow you to get out of this, but I mean, that's probably very, very narrow.
It would have to be 2 different Pokemon.
Yes. So I think this deck is mechanically maybe one of the most fun ideas that I've seen tried in the game so far. Until I haven't played it, all right, it looks like it's just not going to get the job done for me if you're going up against strong EX Pokemon. I feel like they'll just overpower it. But again, if they're trying to set up with Moltres and you just like Sabrina their Moltres out, then they try to get Moltres back in to put the energy on it, you Pidgeot their Moltres out, and they're just like manually trying to put energy on Charizard then at that point, and maybe you could just deal enough damage to the Charmander and then to the Chameleon to eventually just kill. Like, so it might actually have a pretty good lineup against the Moltres deck. It depends on how early you draw Sabrina. I think you need to draw Sabrina early because Pidgeot is a little bit slower there. But other than that, like, I think Pikachu is just going to eat this deck for breakfast for the most part, because even if they switch out your Pikachu, you get Zapdos. Zapdos is still very strong. Arbok only has 100 HP. Pidgeot's weak to lightning. So I think it's going to struggle to actually, like, win a tournament. But I think, like, this is the exact kind of deck I want to see get more support. I want bench control. I want to pull their Pokemon they don't want to be active into the active spot, lock it down. I want a trainer or a supporter that's like the opponent's active Pokemon can't retreat next turn or something like that, right? I want more of these really, really cool battlefield control mechanics.
Yeah, and it's all about what you said in our first segment, right? Interaction. Pokemon is a game that does not have a high level of interaction because there's no counter spells, etc. There's no trap cards, and cards that allow you to control things in a preemptive way are the only way to really interact. You have to play a card that says it has an effect during your opponent's turn, and then you have a level of interaction that you normally don't have.
Yeah, and so I think that this deck is very cool. And actually, you know what? I'm surprised. I think about the fire matchup. I think it might be better than I was thinking, or I think that one actually might be pretty good. But I think there's just a lot of matchups where you're just not getting enough out of it because I don't think Corner is doing quite enough damage. You have to get, if you don't get Pidgeot, Arbok is not a good Pokemon to have on the front line. 60 damage is a little bit low, and 100 HP is like fine, but it's not crazy for a stage 1 either. I don't feel like for a stage 1 that can't go stage 3. I think this is weak overall, but I think it's very fun.
And I would like us to do like star ratings, right? So like the game plays with, you know, like a rating system that generally only goes from 1 diamond to 4 diamonds and then 1 star, right? That encompasses all of the Pokemon, at least in their base form. So we can kind of use that as a rating system for the decks, and then that, you know, that can be a fun way to compare decks and for us to realize when we're wrong a couple months later about something, you know what I mean, etc. Like you really thought this was a 3 diamond deck and it ended up being better. Before you give your rating though, I want to give my counter opinion because I know you think this is a very mid deck that struggles against a lot of things. I think this is actually a very strong deck that struggles definitely against Starmie EX, and it struggles against people who don't bench Pokemon they don't need to bench, right? So it's like when you see an Ekans, if you know what it does and you understand this deck, you can play around it pretty easily by only playing 2 Pokemon that both have low energy attacks, etc. Now, some decks don't have access to Pokemon like that, you know what I mean? Like Moltres is not going to be able to actually generate a damage attack for 1 energy, but it can power load other creatures. But the things it's power loading, like you said, are going to really struggle if they're stuck in the active spot for multiple turns. Now, 60 damage is enough to be able to knock out most basic Pokemon, so with the evolution line of like a Charmander, you can go ahead and take out the Charmander before it even becomes a Charmeleon, and even if it becomes a Charmeleon, then it could retreat and bring back up, but guess what you're probably going to do? Use Pidgeotto again the next turn, right, and bring it up. But there is some kind of time lapse where you have to set up the stage 2 first, which is the difficulty of this deck. So against like Pikachu Zapdos, I think Zapdos really struggles doing 20 damage each turn against the Arbok, and it gets 3-shot by the Arbok. So I actually think Arbok wins in the situation with that. The Pikachu will be able to come up and then 1-shot the Arbok in return. So you actually probably want to deal with the Pikachu first and then deal with
Pidgeot doesn't die to Pikachu even with a Giovanni. It only does 120 damage, and he has 130 HP. So
that's actually pretty useful as well. Like,
I think you've convinced me, and here's the main thing that convinced me that I think this version of this deck may not be the best form of it. I think so. Here's the, like you just said, here's the mind games that happen. They see you play Ekans. They don't want to play all their bench Pokemon, right? They don't want to bench a ton of Pokemon because they want to be able to, switch into specific things. So maybe they end up holding more Pokemon in their hand, and then you red card them, and then they have all the basic Pokemon in their deck. I think if you're putting 2 red cards in here, I think that's going to bump it up because you want to be able to punish them when they play their cards, and then you also can punish them when they're not playing their cards. I think the issue is, I think if you go up against Moltres, this deck wins every time it draws Sabrina, probably on turn 1. Like if they just play only Moltres and they don't play another Pokemon, then hopefully you get red card and then you just really punish them. And then if they play Charmander and Moltres and then you just Sabrina into their Charmander, that's brutal too, man. I think that's a great matchup for this deck, actually. I bumped it up a rating.
I would have to look at the the numbers with the Giovanni and like when it hits really good numbers, but it's like you two-shot Pikachu, you three-shot all the other EXs. Like I don't know if the Giovanni, like that might be what you take out to play 2 red cards, and I
Yeah,
agree.
it
Red card seems just like a natural great fit in this deck. I do want to say that setting up a stage 1 and a stage 2 to enact your game plan is a difficult combination of things to
mhm.
pull off, and I do think there's some sort of, you know, maybe it's a 20% odds or something where you just never get set up over the course of the game to be able to, you know, use this kind of pulling up Pokemon mechanic, etc. You do have Sabrina as a backup option to Pidgey up, but Sabrina, 2 Sabrinas is not going to be able to win you the game with Arbok.
No, 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 not even close. You're definitely gonna need some yeah, you know what? You're gonna need a little more support. And I think the issue Pidgeot takes so long to set up that it actually could be an issue. Because one of the issues with Arbok, I feel like, is you kind of need to keep it safe. You really want something that can't attack back until they start investing energy into it. Um, but I mean, yeah, actually, I'm more impressed. What's the highest rating? Is it star? It was the highest. It was 4
I
diamonds
believe
or a
it's
star.
Star, right? Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think that's what you want to call it.
I'm gonna give it 3 diamonds. It was at 2 diamonds. You bumped it up a diamond for me.
And honestly, like, are we going to do half diamonds or is it just fulls?
I think we just do fulls. Otherwise, it's a 10-point scale, and
Yeah, on a
there's no
5 point
half
scale,
diamond card.
I think I'm really with you because I'm like I would be using a half diamond here if I could, but this is not a 4 diamond deck. I don't think this is a deck that has a high skill ceiling, which is something I always like to see in the game. To allow people to exercise that, unlike the Articuno deck, which has like a very small, like you could be the best player in the world, you maybe win 7% of more games than the average player. So yeah, I give 3 stars, 3 diamonds, sorry, as well. Um,
The only thing
I
I'm
think it's a
thinking here,
fun deck.
would you no, no, no. You can't run Arbok and Victory Bell because they both need to be active for their effect to work. Okay. Yeah, I think you need to throw a red card in here, and that I think 3-star or 3 diamond is the red card version, and then 2 diamond without red card.
I do think there's some sort of world. I don't think it's necessarily better, but it's interesting where you do run Victory Bell, and you use 1 turn to bring up a Pokemon that never wants to be brought up. Something with 3 retreat cost, something that needs 4 energy to attack, and then you switch out into Arbok, and then you leave it locked in there. Because of course you only need to kill 1 EX and 1 non-EX. So Victory Bell would allow you to actually choose 1 EX off of like not rip, but like as soon as you get set up, right? And then a non-EX, or vice versa, if you had already somehow killed an EX by the time you got Victory Bell set up. I think it's interesting. I'm not sure how good that would be.
At that point, I'm not sure. Like, if you pull something in that has like a 3 or 4 energy, or probably 4 is very rare, but like a 3 retreat cost, like at that point, do you need the Arbok? I'm not even sure you need the Arbok at that point. I mean, I guess if they're running like 2x speeds or something, but I feel like Victory Bell's doing his job solo almost at that point, you know? And Victory Bell also does 60 damage.
You want something in the active spot that needs a lot of resources to attack, but also isn't easy to retreat in the 1 turn you have to wait before you use Arbok.
Yeah. Yeah, overall, I think Victory Bell is a very interesting card. One of the most powerful, maybe the most powerful Pokemon ability in the game. I just am not yet sure exactly how to utilize it. But yeah, so overall, we're both giving this a 3 diamond, it sounds like, version here. Or sorry, I'm covering your face over here so I can see how much time we're at. Okay, we're gonna go through this next one a little bit faster here. But this is one that I pulled because I really like Alakazam. So here is the next deck we are looking at here. And I mostly pulled this because of Alakazam, but I am actually kind of interested in, like, I don't feel like this is probably an ideal split. This is probably collection restrictions in some way. Like, maybe they don't have 2 and 2 of these cards. But okay, what are your initial thoughts about this deck?
My initial thoughts are probably the collection kind of thing where I'm like, why 1 copy of Jinx, right? Often I feel like if 1 copy of something is good enough to play in a 20-card deck, play 2. It just increases your odds of hitting it. So why Jinx? And then once again, why Clefable?
Yeah, this is kind of why I pulled it. I think first thing I would do is cut Jinx. I just don't think it serves a purpose. Like, you're doing the Alakazam thing, and Jinx maybe as a backup, but I don't think you want a backup to the core identity of your deck necessarily that's this redundant and just that much weaker than it. It's so much weaker. I think you would just rather find a way to stall a little bit longer. That's my initial reaction. But Clefable, I'm actually interested in. 100 HP, 40 damage. It is a stage 1, but it seems like a pretty reasonable Pokemon. But is it actually better than Farfetch'd because you need to have stage 1? It does have 40 more HP. It survives Pikachu. What do you think about Clefable as like a support for Alakazam?
I think it's interesting. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a better psychic one energy attacker, right? And I really think that when you look at the collection, you probably end up in a situation where you're like, it's Farfetch'd or Clefable, and it's really just about which one buys me enough time to set up an Alakazam, which one does better against the meta. Pikachu is kind of the most impactful thing in that meta because obviously Farfetch'd is going to die to that, and as you said, the Clefable won't. Mewtwo is going to kill both of them. Charizard is going to kill both of them. A lot of things are going to kill both of them. But why don't you get into what exactly Alakazam does and why it's such a cool mechanic?
Yeah, so Alakazam, it's probably hard to read this, but if you don't know what Alakazam does, he does 60 damage, but then he does 30 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. So if they have, you know, one energy, this is 90, and then math, you know, 90, 120, 150, 180. So Alakazam is maybe my favorite card in the game because I love the idea of like I don't know, it's like a suplex. The bigger they are, the harder they fall kind of like idea. You know, suplex a train. I love the idea. I love when you get a ton of energy. Like this thing makes Blastoise look like a punk, bro. This thing hits Blastoise really hard. But there's a huge drawback right now. I actually think Alakazam is exceptionally good into the Pikachu stuff. It one-shots Pikachu. If Pikachu's attacking, he has 2 energy, which would make him do 120 damage. You're doing exact. Zapdos, I don't remember Zapdos' HP, but if Zapdos has his 4 energy to do his big attack, you're one-shotting Zapdos. So it's very good, I think, in those in general, as long as you can get to that point. But the issue is, I think the meta is not entirely based around what's good and what's bad. I think the meta, it definitely isn't partially, but a lot of people are playing their flashy cards, right? People pull a Charizard EX, a Mewtwo EX, and a Pikachu EX. Those are probably the 3 most common cards you're going to be seeing because they are the chase cards of the first set. And this card is not good into Mewtwo EX, and it's not good in the Charizard EX. Both of these cards have ramping support and discard energy when they attack. So Mewtwo, it's even worse against Mewtwo, because Mewtwo, if you have their stage 2 ramper in the back, this can attack every turn. Mewtwo can attack every turn with 4 energy and then end the turn with only 2 energy. And then they could ramp another energy and put their energy for the turn on it. So Alakazam is only doing like 120 damage to him, which is still good damage, but he's getting one shot by these Pokemon. So he's just not doing his job of like executing stuff against 2 of the most popular decks in the current meta. I think if it kind of shifts and people start using cards that are not about stacking as much, or not about discarding the energy, but are about stacking energy for big attacks, suddenly Alakazam becomes like a meta breaker card. He's like a tech card in a lot of ways against these really, really big decks, because for 3 energy, I mean, you could be doing 180 damage, no problem, you know, if they're putting 4 energy on their guy, but I just don't think it's the meta for him.
I want to agree with you on I love the mechanic of punishing someone for investing resources into a single target, right? Because as we know, tempo is a really big deal. And not only does he have the ability to one-shot a Blastoise or to kill the Pikachu in one attack, but throughout the way that the games play out, very often those are the only energies really on the field outside of maybe an energy on a Moltres on the bench, or like 1 energy on a second Pikachu or something like that, and then that Pikachu comes up and attacks for 90, right? And how much HP do we have as I have a hard time reading this card.
It's 130, so it's kind of it's low for a stage 2, but I think that's a great point to be at.
So this whole deck, you need to knock out 3 Pokemon. No matter what, there are no EXs. And
that's true.
I think that's an advantage as well.
Even if you kill that Alakazam, having to go through 200 HP of Clefables hitting for 40, I actually think is pretty good too. All of it is non-EX, which I think is pretty relevant. Like you said, because the biggest issue would be if you Farfetched, like if Alakazam was an EX and then you lost Farfetched early on switching your Alakazam, if that ever dies, you lose. But even if they kill that, you still have a chance to deal another 40, 80 damage before you lose.
Which is why I'm not actually that upset if you decide to run this deck with 2 Farfetch'd and save those 2 card slots from the Clefable for other things.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's really cool that you can go Farfetch'd, I attack until it dies. By then, we're hoping we have an Alakazam ready. If not, second Farfetch. Until you die. Now we bring up Alakazam, we try to sweep the board, and if they bring up something that lowers our HP, we're trying to set up a second Alakazam.
Yeah, I would say 100% of the time I would take Jinx out, though. I just think Jinx is, like, not a good backup plan. It's too weak. Like, even if they have 2 energy, it's only hitting for, what, 70 damage, right? Like, they have to have 2 energy for it to be a average attack. So they have to have 3 or 4 energy for it to be above rate, and at that point, like, if you don't have your Alakazam online by the point where Jinx becomes good, I think you've lost that game anyway. Like, it just, like, you're just... Your backup plan, you're not playing to your outs. You're trying to have redundancy, but your redundancy is still going to make you lose. I think you've got to play to your outs in this kind of deck, where your sweeper is Alakazam. And if you don't get Alakazam set up, you're like, well, shit, that sucked. Oh, well, bad luck that game.
Yeah. And if we get some more support, like, I don't think Great Ball is a card that could be printed, which would be traditionally a card that would go get you a stage 1 Pokemon, right? Or even, is it just stage 1 or is it stage 1 or stage 2? I don't remember, but even if it just got you a stage 1, I think that card might be too good to be played this early into a meta. But if they could just give us some sort of support that makes it more consistent to get stage 2s set up, like, we really need stage 2s to be getting up set up by turn 3, 4 at the latest, right? So it's like, as long as we can, if we can say on average you have a Alakazam on turn 4, then this deck, I think, is pretty freaking playable. I don't think the way that card draws work, that's currently the case. I don't think you get, on average, a turn 4
And
Alakazam.
we're actually going to talk about that when we get to the tier list that we're doing this episode, with the especially with, like, the Machamp and stuff. But all right, so this is going to be the halfway point of the podcast. This is a sponsored video. Laliette, if you could please read out our advertisement here, please. He is our in-house he's the one that handles that stuff.
All right, I've got to bring something to the podcast. He brings the 15,000 subs, right? I bring just me. So here's a little addition to the value proposition. Introducing Pikachu's Pelts, the ultimate comfort and style. Tired of ordinary? Elevate your life with Pikachu's Pelts, the premium fox pelts inspired by the world's most electrifying Pokemon. Whether you're cozy, up at home, or stepping out in style, our Pikachu Pelts deliver the warmth and boldness that only Pikachu could inspire. Features: shockingly soft, lightning fast warmth, bright yellow hues with iconic Pikachu patterns, static resistant, no accidental zaps. Get yours today and spark joy in every season. Gotta snuggle 'em all. Do have a small disclaimer. These pelts may or may not be made out of Pikachus. It's just kind of our pocket thing.
Team Pocket has no comment on whether or not Pokemon were harmed in the making of these. All right. Now, thank you very much for the sponsor. They're paying us a lot of money, so make sure you guys support it if you want them to come back next week, because we lost last week's sponsor. So hopefully we can get another one here. Anyway, we're gonna do a tier list. We are going to rank every EX Pokemon in the game. We're just gonna go by the list it has here. You can see this list is gonna have some non-EX Pokemon. Those aren't part of the list. This is just the one that we found online. Can I shout out who made this? Thank you, Otaku Gamer. Thank you, Otaku Gamer, for making this. All right, so we have
recommended his video, ironically.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, perfect. Well, maybe I could put it in the description. Not the first line though. That's reserved for search engine purposes. But yeah, we'll put something down there.
And even though we're giving reference here, for our decks, as of right now, we're not saying who made them, because we're very critical of things and we don't really want to hurt anybody's feelings or get it put out there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Really quick before we jump into the tier list, what do you give this? What do you rank this deck?
I forgot. I'm not gonna rate this version, but like the best version of this deck,
okay.
I really think is a solid 3. I really wish there was halves.
Yeah, you know what? I actually, if there were halves, I just don't want to do halves, because there's no 3.5 diamond card in the game. If we're kind of trying to keep on the theme of card rarity, I don't think it makes sense. But if this was closer to like a 2.5, I think this is a little bit better. Not this version, but I think the best version of this deck on average is just going to perform better than the Pidgeybok deck. So I'm going to give this one 3 as well. And I would put this, like, if this is a tier list, I'd put it higher on the same tier myself.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 4 because I think it's that much better than the Arbok deck, and I just want to be consistent in some kind of way.
That's good. I mean, I think the Alakazam deck is great. I think it just, again, I think this deck will be a 4 in the meta. I think with Charizard and Mewtwo being around, I just think it's not doing enough damage currently. But I think it has all the potential, especially when the next set comes out and people are suddenly moving to different cards. I think this deck is going to suddenly skyrocket in power. But let's actually get into the tier list. This is not the tier list. What did you do? Who hit that button? All right. So we're starting strong. Okay. So here's the tier list. The very first Pokemon we are doing is Arcanine. So we don't need to spend a lot of time because we've already been talking a while on the bad ones, but we can quickly explain each why they're bad. We agreed to put Arcanine in tier C. Why do you think Arcanine belongs in tier C?
Right. We do these independent of any other card, right?
Yes.
We're not perfect at doing that. We really try to do that. But Arcanine is only in any way playable because of Moltres being an insane card. And having 3 energy and then damaging yourself for 20 to only do 120, is that?
It's 120 damage. Yeah, it's 120 damage for 3 energy with a downside.
It's just not good enough. I would rather it be 2 fire energy, deals 90 damage, and then you can 2-shot kind of everything. But the difference between 90 damage and 120 is not that much, and you need a whole additional energy, and you have a downside.
This is like, I feel like one of the only Pokemon on here that if it was a basic, it wouldn't even be better. I don't even know if I would still want to use it, even if I didn't have to stage 1 evolve it first. I think this, in my opinion, this is probably the worst EX. The main, so also when we're saying we're kind of doing cards in a vacuum, the only exception I think we're kind of making to that is like trainer support cards, direct cards that are designed specifically for that card. Things like Moltres that are on this tier list. If Moltres makes something good, that's Moltres making something good. That's not the card being good, if that makes sense. That's more to the power of, not that Moltres is good. We don't know that yet. But yeah, I mean, Arcanine EX, I think it's just the worst card. It doesn't do enough damage. I mean, it does decent damage. 120 is fine, but its HP isn't crazy high. It deals damage to itself, so it's even worse than it looks. It's not one-shotting enough things. The 120 is an okay breakpoint. I put it as like the only soft attack breakpoint in my recent video because it's like the only thing super relevant you're killing is Pikachu in one shot. There's a lot of other things that you need to start getting up to the 150 category. Once you're at 150, now you're a heavy hitter. But this also, he just gets himself killed. He effectively has 130 HP once he attacks once. And he's weak to water, which is also probably the strongest thing right now. So I have almost nothing good to say about him. If this was 2 energy, maybe we could talk, but yeah, I'm talking too much about him at this point.
I do want to agree. If he was a basic, I'm still not playing him.
Yeah, it's just like he's bad. All right, I'm sorry. And Arcanine's one of my favorite Pokemon. He's a cool dog. All right, Articuno EX. I'm gonna throw this up into the
enough about it. So like, you put it where it goes, and I think people know why.
Yes, exactly. I think everyone agrees Arcanine EX is dog water. All right, Articuno EX though, S tier. Also, I don't even know if I mentioned it, but we're ranking every EX Pokemon. It's in the title, it's in the thumbnail. I don't know if I mentioned it verbally, but we're ranking every single EX Pokemon. So, Articuno EX, we're putting in the S tier. And I want to clarify something here. Originally, we had put it in A tier. However, being able to attack on turn 1 and having Misty, and then just basically, like you said, what, 12% or something of games you just guaranteed win, I think that does move it up to an S tier category.
Yeah, I think we've talked what I was saying was about Articuno, not about Arcanine. I'm sorry. We talked about this in an earlier point. I think everybody understands why it's an S at this point. And if you don't agree with us, it's just a difference of opinion.
Yeah, I agree. We've talked about how good that is. This is an S rank here. Blastoise EX with cool alternate text. I believe that's Hyrillian. No, I'm just kidding. But so we're putting him in A tier. Overall, this is just a great Pokemon. I actually don't know if this is something that could be kind of fun to talk about. EX versus regular versions. You know, I actually might like the regular version of him a bit more, but I think it's definitely debatable. The EX version is better in a lot of ways. But basically, you have to get 5 energy on them. That's hard to do. If this was in basically, I mean, maybe fire, it would still be good. Maybe psychic, it would be good. But if this was like I don't know, a darkness card, like I think this would be pretty terrible. But it's in the color that has Misty, right? So it's not that hard to get to that 5 energy. And when you do, you're hitting for 160. You have 180 HP, which is a huge HP pool. I mean, yeah, you're getting 2-shot by a lot of things, but you're surviving pretty much everything at least once, and you're killing almost everything in the game. There's like 3 Pokemon you don't kill with this attack stat. And one of them's Gengar, who you can kill with Giovanni.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's always important is just like there can be 3 Pokemon that you can't kill, and if those 3 Pokemon aren't good, then you will beat those decks because you have a better deck, regardless of the fact that you can't one-shot them in that specific instance.
Yeah, I mean, you're one-shotting Charizard, one-shotting Charizard EX, which is one of the bigger ones. I mean, the only thing you're not killing is like Gengar and like Venusaur, but Venusaur is designed to be strong against Blastoise. Although I still think you win that matchup because he does 100 damage. You hit him for 320 damage over 2 turns, right? So you still beat him, which I think is kind of a flavor loss, but still, that's pretty much it. Like you said, if you're playing bad cards, your deck is probably just gonna, like, if you're playing bad cards with high HP, it doesn't mean that Blastoise is bad. But I do think he's not S tier. I think it's like, if the Misty fails, it's still a stage 2. Stage 2s are very clunky comparatively. You're gonna see a theme here probably. Stage 2s are just they're required 6 deck slots. And it's tough because you have to draw all 3 of the cards. It's like a 3-card combo, but it's not a combo. But you have to draw the basic, which is pretty easy. There's no easy way to draw stage 1, no easy way to draw stage 2. So you can have an opening hand with 2 Blastoise and no War Turtles in the top 6 cards, top 7 cards, and then it's just not coming online in time. So they're clunky, but it's still good for sure.
Yeah. Stage 2s really struggle with the 2 issues of not searchability, like you said, and the time delay. You need to wait a turn to evolve. So it's like, not only do you need all 3 cards, you need all 3 cards within the first 4 or 5 turns, or you're not even really playing the deck.
I can't tell you how mad I got when it was the normal Blastoise, but again, I was gonna destroy my opponent, but I drew War Turtle, but I couldn't War Turtle Blastoise in the same turn, right? I needed to be Blastoise, but I had a Squirtle, so I finally drew War Turtle, and then I couldn't Blastoise. So it's like I just lost because the stage 2-ness of it was just clunky and slow. But that doesn't make the card unplayable. Like, it's still A tier. I think it's like a really good card, but you are going to lose some percentage of games just from it being a stage 2 Pokemon.
And that's the reality. That's the difference between everything that's going to be above A, right? You're going to see higher level of consistency. Might not even be necessarily more powerful than Blastoids. Doesn't need to be if it's more consistent and it has the ability to win you more games.
So this is going to be the first one that's going to get us in trouble. Charizard is going down with Arcanine in the C tier. So this is Charizard when you're not running Moltres EX. Charizard, when you're running Moltres EX, is going to be higher because it is hyper ramped up to an absurd degree. It's better than Moltres EX is probably better than Misty, specifically for like trying to, because it always flips 3 coins no matter what. You never whiff on 1 coin. So, but in a vacuum, the issue is stage 2, 200 damage, 4 energy. He has to discard his energy, so he has a hard time. It actually takes 6 energy to attack twice with him. And the 200 damage is irrelevantly high. It's just like, you don't need that much damage. It's wasted damage that would be really nice if it went into a different stat, a different, maybe an energy cost reduction and a damage reduction. If this had 3 energy and it did like 180 damage or even 160 damage, I think it would be a way better card on its own in a vacuum.
I agree. And once again, if you can't separate in your head, those 2 Pokemon, Moltres and Charizard, because you're like, well, I have 2 copies of both and I play that deck. This would be an S tier card with Moltres, right? So it's like we're just trying to independently evaluate them. And I'm going to give a hot take here. So like this is carrying and building off of Platt's take on Blastoids EX. I do think for sure Blastoids non-EX is strictly better than Blastoids EX as
Mhm.
far as just a comparison, one-to-one comparison. Now, because of the points, right?
Yes.
Very small disparity in the power level. They both use the same style of attack. Giovanni makes it so that you can hit most of the important targets with the non-EX, and then you get the benefit of only being a 1-point Pokemon. Charizard EX, I also feel the same way about. I'm not quite as positive because it's 150 damage, but that is the big number, like where you kind of beat meta cards. Other than the mirror. The mirror is the one place where I'd be like, Charizard EX is better than regular Charizard.
Yes, because Charizard normal doesn't do nearly enough damage to kill Charizard EX. Although I wish Blaine kind of worked with Charizard. It would be irrelevant, but I don't know, man. He give Charizard's a special card. But yeah, like I don't want people to forget that EXs lose you 2 points when you lose. That I understand. Every number on Blastoise EX is better than every number on normal Blastoise. That's just like, I'm not saying from a pure, the numbers on the card standpoint, it is better. But costing 2 points is a significant down, like that's a big cost. You lose when your opponent gets 3 points. And if the upside of the EX card isn't worth that additional point, then the non-EX version will be better in a lot of situations. And the difference between 160 damage and 140 damage is small enough where I think the non-EX version of Blastoise is actually better. But this is
the last
cool
note that I want to make on like the non-EX versus EX kind of deal is the best way I think to think about it is you can never still play the game after 2 Blastoids EX dying or 2 Charizard EX dying. You can still play the game after 2 non-X versions of those Pokemon dying, and you have a Hail Mary chance to still win that game.
Yeah, and because you were already doing like enough damage, right? Like again, if like Blastoise EX did like 100 damage flat after the 5 energy, I would never consider that card, right? 140 is a way better breakpoint. It kills almost everything, especially it kills like Mewtwo EX if you have a Giovanni. So like it's a great card, actually. I think Blastoise is really good in this game right now. But yeah, that's why Charizard's down here, basically. He needs Moltres to be actually super viable. Otherwise, it's just so much energy cost, and you're just, if they kill it, and then, yeah, you're just over. So, Executor, B rank. This card, I think, there's not a lot to say. I think B rank is going to be the most boring one to talk about. These are just like solid cards. They're just like, they're good. They're not like broken, but they're just consistent in a lot of times, but their consistency doesn't come with a huge amount of power. It comes with more like, you know, I mean, Executor is just a good card, right? You put him down. He's a stage 1. He's pretty easy to get online. He only takes 1 energy. He does on average 60 damage. It's just a good card. Like, oh, honestly, this card feels like when you have like a weaker deck, it feels oppressive. But once you start getting some things with some HP, you know, you could start dealing quite a bit of damage to this guy pretty easily. So I don't think he's broken, but I think this is like, I would happily run this in a grass deck. Probably most of my grass decks, I would end up running this card just because I like him. But again, 2 points is a lot.
I believe he's the best grass EX, right? Not that there's a lot to work with there. But shout out again to Platt's video about evaluating cards, right? Go check it out if you haven't seen it, because this has 160 HP, which is big because that is bridging the gap of the 150 point damage point, right? So not only does it do 60 damage on average for 1 energy, as a stage 1, that's not too difficult to set up. It is able to survive a Mewtwo's attack if it has no damage on it. Little things like that can really make a card way better than you initially think when you evaluate it. It does have 3 retreat, that can be annoying, but for the most part, when that is up in the active spot, it is there until it dies. That's that.
Gengar EX. This is going in the C tier. Now, I want to make it clear, Gengar is maybe my favorite Pokemon ever. He's in my top 3 Pokemon. This is another situation. I think regular Gengar is probably better most of the time. So this is what you're paying. You have to get a stage 2. And again, I think stage 2s on average are just clunky and slow. They are, you really want an appropriate upside if you are going to be running the stage 2, because some percentage of the time you're just never going to get it online, which is, again, if you're, if you're talking about fun, that doesn't matter. But if you're talking about climbing, you know, win percentages, stage 2s will lower your win percentage. So you need a strong enough card to make up for that loss in win percentage. And I think Gengar turning off, he has a special ability that basically, as long as he's in your active slot, your opponent cannot use supporter cards. That sounds really cool, and I think as the game ages, this card will get better. But right now, like what Sabrina, you know, Professor, like it's good to shut down supporter cards. But this comes online later. You got to keep that in mind. Typically, they've already played their Professors. They've already played their Misties. Sabrina, you might save for a moment, so that might kind of shut off Sabrina. But that's kind of it. It's not that powerful of an ability yet, in my opinion. And also, you need 3 energy to do 100 damage. The 100 damage is not really as good as 90. It almost makes no difference at all. There's very few things you're killing with 100 HP versus 90. There are some things like Kangaskhan, but like it's not super common. Combined with the fact that it just like it takes 3 energy. It just like overall, I'm just not impressed with this card. I think Bother on the normal guy, it takes the normal Gengar takes 1 energy, does 50 damage, and it turns off the special cards as well, the support cards.
There's no reason to play this card. You can just play the non-EX version. With that said, if this card would be better if it was like 2 energy attachments and if it did 70, which is like baseline for a stage 1. That would make it a better card. So it's just kind of silly. Because the effect is already on a non-EX, I do think the effect is going to be very good in future sets. This card may never be good in future sets. Gengar is my favorite Pokemon. It's unfortunate, but he tends not to be very good in most things that I seem to try to play him in.
He, you are 100 damage for 3 energy for a stage 2 is below rate. And there's the upside is an ability that's already on a different version of Gengar that may even be a better version of Gengar. So you're not getting enough upside for this. I just don't see why I would run this over the other Gengar outside of the fact that there's some really cool full art versions of like I like this card's art, right? That's why I would run it. But also, again, 2 points. It costs you 2 points when you lose it. That's a huge downside. Don't forget it. All right, so these are all just cards that this list thought was good. All right, Machamp EX. I'm excited for this one.
All right, so before we talk about Machamp EX, I really just quickly want to reiterate exactly what Plat just said, but just in the easiest way to remember what he's teaching you, okay? So stage 2s have issue with stability and reliability. That needs to come with an upside. It can't be as good as another card that has a lower risk. The easiest way I would thinking of that is stage 2s about 25% of the time, 1 out of 4 games, you're not going to get to play with your stage 2 until it's too late, and you didn't really play with that game. So because it has that lower level of consistency than like a basic Pokemon who you always get to play with for the most part, in those 75% of games where you actually get online, you need to win above rate within those 75% to be able to make up for the fact that you don't get to actually play and interact in all 100% of games.
Yes, like you don't want to win 50% of games that you get your EX online, right? You want to be winning like closer to 60, 65% once you actually, that's when you get it online. Again, 25% sounds high. Like, what do you mean? I get my card online way more than, 25% miss. This is talking about getting online on a relevant turn, on turn 3, on turn 4. Yeah, if you go to turn 7 and 8, you'll probably get it. But at that point, it's like, it's going to have so much less impact than if you had it right away, So 25% of games, it sounds high, but that's taken into account tempo, curve, like that.
And I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about Machamp because this is just a really fun card to evaluate. If you look at breakpoint numbers that we talk about, he hits these kind of like breakpoint numbers. On paper, this is a good card. In practice, it's not, and Plat is going to tell us why.
Yeah, so if you watch my video, maybe this would have been a good example to use, but I thought it would be so antithetical and like kind of shoot the own video in his foot. So you look at breakpoints. This card hits all the breakpoints that seems good. It does 120 damage, which is like a good soft breakpoint, but it's not a hard breakpoint. It has 180 HP, so it's a decent amount of HP where it's not getting one shot by almost anything in the game. But it's still a fucking terrible card. It's really bad. And it's really bad for a couple of reasons. the three main reasons. 180 HP is enough to not get one shot, but it's always low enough to get two shot. Always, like pretty much everything is gonna two shot it. 120 HP or damage is good, but 150 is where you start one-shotting stuff. This is trying to two-shot things and one-shot things like Pikachu. The issue is if you're going after Pikachu, you don't want a stage 2 Pokemon that requires 3 energy to do it. This thing doesn't come online in a perfect game until roughly turn 4. There's two outcomes. You could say it only takes 3 energy, that's true, but are you going to do nothing for 3 turns? Are you going to put something up front and then put no energy on it, and then so the only way that this attacks on turn 3 is if you start with Machop and then you evolve it into Machamp over 3 turns, and you put your energy on it every turn. So maybe you hit for 20, you hit for 30, then you hit for 120, but then your guy's almost dead. And then you've put all your energy in your first 3 turns into a guy that has probably less than 90 HP now, and he gets one shot. You have no energy on your board. You have lost, you're down 2 points. If they can kill a Farfetch, they win, you know? So it just doesn't work. So typically what you're going to be doing is you're going to put something like Kangaskhan out because you're trying to stall a little bit, and then you're going to put 1 energy on Kangaskhan, and then you're trying to get this up your next 3 energy to go on this card. And then he comes out and he's just like worse than Blastoise, because Blastoise, you have Misty support, and it just, that's in an ideal situation. That's when you get him and you have all the cards you need. You have to draw 3 cards and invest 3 energy, and the payoff is just not there. He's just not doing it. Do you have anything to add?
So he kind of shows you exactly why Alakazam's good, right? So it's like Alakazam is a non-EX that has 50 less HP, which is impactful, but let's remember 2 points versus 1. It's going to do more damage than this against a majority of targets. It's going to do it for the same amount of energy attachments, and it's also a stage 2. So one argument would be, why ever play this? I know they're different types, but over something like non-EX Alakazam.
Also, Alakazam with Giovanni one-shots Machamp because of the weakness. And Machamp does not one-shot Alakazam without Giovanni. So they both one-shot each other with Giovanni. One of them costs 2 points, one of them costs 1 point. They're both stage 2s, and one of them's an EX. This card is like, it's just not worth it, man. You're not getting what you need out of this card. There's so many ways to make this card more powerful. If you made this card, I think 2 energy, and it did, even if it did as low as like 90 damage, it would be almost the same card. Like in a lot of ways, it would still 2-shot almost everything. Or if it did 150 damage, now we're talking. Now it's 1-shotting almost everything. But
I don't think it's too good with 150, right? I think it just goes up to B if it's 150. It doesn't even get to A.
Yeah, no, it becomes better, but it's still like, I think 150 is like fair. That's what I think. This card is so bad that I think if it had 150 energy, it would be like, wow, this is a decent card. Yeah, I could see running this card. It's fine. It's still not busted. Because Mewtwo EX does 50, but Mewtwo EX is a basic, right? Mewtwo EX can pay that extra energy with a downside because you don't need to draw 3 cards over 4 turns to actually make this work. So yeah, Machamp, we're talking about you too long, but we're keeping you. I think you're better than Arcanine. I think Arcanine's that bad, but I think you're just about the worst card.
Better, to be
Really?
fair. I just want to get that out there so everybody in the comments. Arcanine is a stage 1 that does the exact same thing as the stage 2.
That's
you know
true.
What I mean? So
if you attack twice with Arcanine, you go down to 110 HP. You still survive 190 damage hit. I mean, maybe you know what? I'll put Arcanine above Machamp. I think Machamp is fair to put the worst. All right, Marowak EX. I'm looking at my cheat sheet here just so I remember. We're putting it in B tier. I think the B tiers are very boring for the most part. I mean, this is just totally a fine card. The stage 1, it does on average 80 damage. No, it does on average 120 damage, right? Because it does 80. No, because it could do 0 damage. So it does on average 80 damage. So this is a great card. It has a decent amount of HP. Sometimes it high rolls and one-shots everything. Sometimes it low rolls and doesn't do anything. It has, I think what makes this card better is its low retreat cost. It's pretty easy to attack with it. When it's suddenly in danger because they get it really low, you get to switch it out. And then that's like pretty safe because EXs that could switch out are actually a pretty big deal. Machamp takes 3 to switch out. He's not going anywhere. But overall, this is like such a, like, this is a reason why this is like the first card, at least I got in my account. This card was just like so super, like, good, but like mid at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I want you guys to keep track. There's 3 Pokemon that you get when you open your like first pack of the game, and see where they are at the end of this video. 2 of them are in B right now, so just a little aside. But there's nothing wrong with this card. If you like to flip coins, you're gonna love this card. If you don't like to flip coins, you think this card's an F.
If you like flipping coins, you should play Jolteon and Misty in the same deck. You do the Vaporeon deck. I flipped so many coins in that video. Yeah, it's a good card. Not much to say about it. Mewtwo EX. I'm gonna put this up in the A tier. Do you think it's better or worse than Blastoise? I put it worse than Blastoise, but I don't necessarily
I think it's better on a consistency level, right?
Yeah. And again, because if that means, would I rather have regular Blastoise or Mewtwo EX? I actually don't know. That's a different video. All right, that's a different video. But Mewtwo EX, this is just a super solid card. If it was a stage 1 or anything, I think it goes way down, but it's not. It's a basic. This card is so consistent, and it's in a color that has the 3-stage support, right? Or when you have that Gardevoir or whatever, as a basic ability every turn, it could put an energy on this. You could put your energy from your turn on this. So this can use Side Drive every single turn once it's online, and you can get up. It doesn't get online particularly fast because, again, you need a stage 3 to start ramping it, and at that point you're probably already there, but allows you to keep attacking again and again and again. And 150 is a great break point because you get 2 attacks with this, you've probably won. And I mean, I don't think it's like a broken card at all. I think it's just pretty good, and I think it's mostly good because it's a basic and it has high consistency.
Yeah, so this card's unbelievably good. The reason we have it in A is because we're not evaluating it with Gardevoir, right? Those are just additions that make it better than it already is. But the consistency, and this is a big deal, something that unfortunately Charizard doesn't benefit from, which is a very similar card, is that it has a 2 energy attack, which is very impactful for when you go second, being able to hit on turn 2 for 50, opposed to doing literally nothing, right? So obviously on turn 2 you can't have a Charizard, but like, you get the idea behind that. So you have a turn 2 attack when you go second. You also have the ability once Gardevoir is up to be able to do that every turn, like he said. But that's why I would put it much higher with Gardevoir. But same thing with Charizard. Charizard with Moltres is much better.
Yeah. Do you start with this on your front line? Do you think it survives long enough to start using that Side Drive?
What I'm saying? Like it survives long enough if you're playing Gardevoir, right? By itself, of course. Like you probably want to get some energy on it, etc. But even in a Gardevoir deck, you're playing like 2 Ralts and 2 of these, and usually like 1 other Pokemon of a 2 of. So you're gonna have this in your starting hand, 33% of the time, and you might not have another Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, and worst case scenario, the retreat cost of being 2 means you can SOS retreat this, because if you draw a second one or something, and maybe like things get out of hand, like it's not impossible to get out. You might be losing that game anyway, though. At that point, I guess. I'm not quite as high as the card as you are, but I've played it a reasonable amount and it's always been good. But I feel like the issue is, like, I put this up front, they put Pikachu up front, and I'm like, oh shit, bro, this is not gonna be good. All right, next up
Pikachu is good for a reason, right? We're not gonna say how good, but it is good for a reason, and it is because these big banger boys who like to hit for 150 plus, they don't like it when you can 2-shot them for less energy than they use to do their 1-shotting.
Exactly. So Moltres EX, I think this is an S+ tier Pokemon. I think it is debatable, but I think this could be the best card in the entire game.
Yeah. Everything's debatable. This card is Misty if Misty always let you flip 3 coins. Only it's not a supporter, it's just an attack for 1 energy.
It's a better card than Misty, which I think is probably in the top 3 cards. The only card that maybe is better is maybe Sabrina, because it could be used in every deck in the game. But I think from a power level standpoint, it's not as strong. But there is some flexibility, like, argument there. But yeah, Inferno Dance is you flip 3 coins, boom, boom, boom. As many heads as you get to put that on a benched Pokemon. You don't even care that it can attack. You just don't care. Like, I think the only issue with Moltres EX is that it's kind of annoying to retreat. If you do Inferno Dance on your first turn, you get 3 heads and you put 3 heads on your Charizard or whatever, or your Charmander, Chameleon. Then you're like, oh, now I got so much free energy, I gotta retreat my Moltres. Like, that's not really a downside, you know? You're like, that's fine.
And then you use an X speed.
Yeah, use
and
an
then
X
you
speed.
still get your Charmeleon up, and you still hit for 60, which doesn't matter because next turn, hopefully we have a Charizard, which of course the consistency issue is still there. But Moltres can Moltres onto a Moltres, and then you can X speed retreat your Moltres to attack for 70 with Moltres, and doing that, going second on turn 2, actually extremely powerful.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost no doubt. Like, Inferno Dance is an insane ability. It's like,
Can I say something I'm worried about with Moltres?
Yeah.
If they don't nerf it. Design space. You can't really make a good basic fire Pokemon that has like 3 or 4 like fire energy attack because it's gonna be too good due to Moltres.
I agree. I think if Inferno Dance stays how it is exactly, I do think that it will have an issue with yeah, if they make a EX Charmander, I don't know, you know, something like that. I'm like, now there's a problem here. That could be insane. I do think I think it just needs a nerf. That's all. I don't know if they're gonna nerf cards, but I hope they do. And I think Inferno Dance is there. I mean, it's like Gardevoir, if that's how you say it, is a stage 2, and it can do 1 energy for, you know, a turn for 0 basically. But this is like literally your first attack. You could be ramping 3 energy. You could have 6 energy by your second attack. You know, I know you're not going to get that much, but it's still like, if you're getting 3 coins, you're 1.5, right? You're getting 1.5 energy every time you use this. That is insane for this early in the game. It's better than Misty, and Misty is one of the best cards in the game. The only advantage is Misty could be used on your active spot. This can't use it on its active spot, so you got to retreat it, but I don't think that's a significant downside when we have X speeds and stuff like that. Because if you double X speed this, it is free to retreat.
It's possible that Misty could not allow you to attack on turn 1 once the game actually rolls out in official capacity. That's a possibility. While this card is still going to be consistent if they don't change it, and honestly, I'm not sure if this is on the radar for being changed, because it's really good for having one of your chase cards being really prevalent in the meta. And right now, we have 3 chase cards that are all prevalent in the meta, and honestly, I can't tell you a single one in its deck with all the cards is not very good.
Yes.
They're all very good. And that's good for selling packs.
The main issue I think the main thing that could keep Moltres, maybe they nerf it down the line. At launch, I don't see this going anywhere because Charizard is so bad without this card. You want someone that has Charizard EX to want Moltres EX, just for selling packs, using pack points, stuff like that. You want people to get 2 of these. So I don't think it's going anywhere. It also even makes Arcanine like a lot better. But I think down the line, I think they're going to have to do something about it. Maybe they just make it flip 2 coins. I think that's a pretty relevant nerf. I mean, you still can high roll, but on average, getting 1 energy versus 1.5, I mean, that might seem like a small nerf, but I think 1 coin is probably makes it a bad card. 2 coins, I think, is more balanced.
If it was 1 energy, attach 1 energy to your bench Pokemon, I would still play this card as is.
Yes, I agree. 1 energy, attach 1 energy. But if it was flip 1 coin and add a 50% chance of doing nothing, and you're on average getting half an energy, I think that's where it becomes like probably not usable. I wouldn't use it most of the time. But 2 coins where it averages 1, but you have the low roll and high roll, I think that becomes much more in line. And I know it might seem small, a half energy a turn, a half energy the turn. That's the only resource we got. I mean, you got cards in your hand and you got energy per turn. When you break that, when you ramp in this game, it is very powerful. So I actually think a half energy on average per turn is very relevant in general.
Yes.
But yeah, Moltres EX is insane.
When you do not have many interaction mechanics, and when you do not have many knobs to turn, as he just said, there's only a couple knobs you can turn, then and when you also have a tempo-oriented game, scaling becomes really dangerous, specifically because we do not have a good catch-up mechanic right now. In the future, they could print an item card that gives you plus X amount of damage for each prize point your opponent has. But right now, there's no punishment for just knocking out an EX early and then biding your time to win the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Overall, I think that would actually be an interesting video, like Pokemon problem cards, or these cards need to be nerfed, you know? And obviously Nidoking #1, Machamp #2. Get them out of here. All right.
Yeah,
so let's move on.
Negative nerf.
I think this is what everyone was expecting here for Pikachu. I think Pikachu is the highest S tier Pokemon in the game. I don't think it's as broken as Moltres, but so first, quickly, what makes Pikachu good? 120 HP is really good for avoiding getting one shot. 90 damage. It could do 30 damage plus 30 for each of your bench Pokemon that are lightning. So it could do 90 damage for 2 energy. That is 45 damage per energy. That is kind of absurd at that point. And I mean, the only way you get above that is like Charizard that needs 4 energy to do 200. And that point is irrelevantly high. So there's 2 shots, essentially everything in the game. And it could start attacking on 2 energy. It has 1 retreat cost, so even if it starts dying, you could still retreat it and keep your points safe. The only downside of Pikachu is that you pretty much have to run all lightning Pokemon, which is not really that significant of a downside. But you might run something that's not very good, like Electrode, which is like fine. Or just you run Zapdos, which are both good, but they're not like insane. And in my opinion, they're not insane, but this card basically has no downside. And here's the thing, a lot of what we talk about is how to beat this card, and like, oh, this is good because it lines up good against Pikachu. This is good because it 1-shots or 2-shots Pikachu. That doesn't make Pikachu a bad card. This is showing you that the game is kind of warped around how good this card is. And so we're looking, how good a card is, a lot of times, is based on how it matches up against this card. This card is almost like the baseline of like, you got to be able to handle this card or you're just getting stomped into the ground. What do you think about Pikachu?
I think you said everything excellently. Basically, this is the best card that you could have. Well, not that you could have, but that we do have in the game that isn't broken, right? So like, this is perfectly in a safe zone where it's not in danger of being nerfed. It's in a very safe place where it does affect the meta, and kind of it has gravity that pulls the meta around it as far as how to deal with it and how to, put up with 90 damage that comes out real quick. They have the ability in the future to make this card slightly worse while still allowing it to be very effective by printing like colorless or cards that you would want to run in a cross deck, like a lightning fighting deck or something, that are very powerful, that Pikachu would not really have access to because it needs the 3 bench Pokemon to be electric. But I really like the way the card is made. I like that it is the face of Pokemon. That is also one of these cards that is, really big. And I just think they did an excellent job in designing the 3 chase cards, because all 3 of them, when they're in their decks, are at the top, of the list.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely built the sets kind of around these chase cards. I didn't even mention probably the most important thing about Pikachu, which is going to be super relevant to the next card here, Starmie. On paper, Starmie looks like, well, I think Starmie's an S tier card, insane. And I think Starmie is better than Pikachu, with the exception, Pikachu is a basic Pokemon. There is 100% consistency. You draw it, it goes down, it just starts going off. There's like no games where you draw Pikachu too late, really. I mean, I guess you could just draw it like really late into the game, but even if you draw it like on turn 3 and you get it going online pretty quick, you still have Lieutenant Surge sometimes. No, he only works on Raichu, doesn't he?
Right.
That card sucks. But Starmie, I think, is like better than Pikachu, except for it's a stage 1. It does the same amount of damage for the same amount of energy, has more HP, and has a 0 retreat cost. But you can Misty it, right? So you can even get it going even faster. But you're paying for that consistency with a stage 1. However, I don't think that's enough to bump it below S. I think Starmie is like a busted Pokemon. The very first time I opened this in a pack, I read it, I'm like, God, dumbass Starmie, stupid star card. I was like, wait, am I crazy? You can see our message to Laliette. Like, I sent a message to Laliette. I'm like, wait, am I crazy, or is this card busted? I had never seen this card before. And I'm like, this card is really good. Absolutely a great build around card. The 0 retreat cost is no joke, man. If Pikachu with 0 retreat cost would be even better. It's not really that relevant, But still, being able to retreat this out and then maybe switch it back in later for another hit, you know, is just very good. You don't need to dedicate any more energy to this card ever, and you can Misty it. Busted card, in my opinion.
And water has much better support than electricity, right? As far as what creatures do you want to play with Pikachu? Not going to be as great as the creatures you're going to play. Starmie. Starmie's going to have some bangers, like an Articuno you can play with it, right? Like a Greninja you could play with it. I don't think you play it with Blastoids, but I do think that is a great card. And I don't even think it's necessarily the focus of your deck as much as like it's similar to Moltres, where it plays a really nice support role where anytime something gets knocked out, you can bring it up and you don't have to have an X speed. You don't have to put energy on to retreat. It's very easy to retreat. If somebody's trying to use, you know, like a Pidgeotto or something, boom, you bring that up, you bring it back down, you bring up what you want to attack with. Yeah, it's great.
It also survives a hit from Pikachu, you know, even with the disadvantage, right? It only even disadvantage with Giovanni, right? Because it has 130 HP. Which is great. That's right. Like that's huge.
When it's
actually.
Him and Pikachu head to head, whoever attacks first wins.
Yes, and you have Misty on your side, so you're more likely to be able to attack first. So, but again, you're paying. Like, I think it's a better card than Pikachu, but it's not overall a better card than Pikachu because it's a stage 1, right? So some of the time it's not going to be as good because you're just not going to draw it right away. But in the games where, and even when you do draw it, you have one less card in your hand because it took another deck slot, right? So their stages are a huge downside, but I think this card absolutely has enough upside to compensate for that. But I still don't think it's on. I think Pikachu's high S and this is low S.
Whenever you're looking at a card that's not a basic, you definitely want to be looking at is there a basic that does like the same thing as this card, because your stage 1 should be more powerful than your basic card because of the consistency.
Yeah, and like non-EX Starmie is like dog water. It does like 1 energy, does 40 damage. It's like and I think it has under 100 HP actually. It's just not good. It's like, it has 0 retreat cost, but it's like comparatively to this Starmie, I'm like, holy crap, I'm running Starmie EX. Where when it comes to Blastoise, I'm like, these numbers aren't significantly different enough for me to care for the premium of an EX. All right. So next we got a couple boring ones here. We should have probably done it in a different order here. We got Venusaur EX. He is going for me into the B tier. It is just a Venusaur EX is one thing keeping him out of C tier for me. He has 190 HP. That is the highest HP in the entire game, and even saves him from being 2-shot by 90 damage. Even if he couldn't attack, he survives 2 hits from 90 damage, which is pretty relevant because a lot of cards hit for 90 damage, right? A lot of these really good cards people are using are hitting for 80 and 90 damage, so always surviving those is pretty good. Being able to heal by 30, if that means he even survives 2 shots from 100 damage, which is not as relevant, right? Because he hit him for 100, he goes down to 90, then he goes up to whatever, 120, but he doesn't survive 110 damage hits. So I think so. I'm not good at math, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't survive 110 damage hits. You guys do the math down below. But 100 damage hits 2 times, that's basically what saves him. He could 2-shot everything in the game while keeping himself alive against anything that is kind of like mid-tier, like that doesn't have a ton of damage. He's like really good against, because if he's going up against an Executor, he just like farms these guys, right? Because they're just not doing enough damage to kill him. He's healing up the full, he's 2-shotting them. He's the 190 HP. I think at 180 HP, this card would be bad. I think 190 HP, this card is pretty reasonable.
And I think the highlight between Executor and Venusaur highlights something in deck building, which could have its own video that I think Plat will do sometime, which is the balance of deck building. You don't want your entire deck to only be 4 energy attackers that you're building into, even though you could put up something just as a meat shield. You also don't want your whole deck to be 1 energy attackers that can't do more than 80 damage in one single attack, because you can run into situations where if that's what your deck is, you just never get to beat a Venusaur because it still has Erica. It has like 2 Ericas and it heals 30 every single time. Like, it's going to take you like 4 Executor EXs to kill a freaking Venusaur EX. So it's tough.
Yeah, so this is why cards like Blastoise I think are good. Cards that can hit for this 120, 150-ish breakpoint is because even like if you're hitting for 150, even if they have an now if they have an Erica, you'll still survive, right? But like that means you're requiring them to have something. Their Giant Bloom isn't going to save it by itself. So I do, because you're not going to one shot this with anything besides like Charizard. Like 190 HP is not getting one shot by almost anything in the entire game. But you need some heavy hitters in order to two shot. There's some really heavy hitters. It becomes pretty
I also
narrow.
wanted to bring up that Blastoids does still two-shot Venusaur, even if they have Erica and even if they attack, because that's only 80 points of healing. So you hit for 150, now you're at 70, then you hit for 150 again, which does over 200 damage.
Right, Blastoise level non-EX hits for 140. I'm pretty sure. And then
Right, well, you were saying 150 in your example, like
okay, yeah.
But even if you did 140, it would still be enough, because it would be, you do 140, it would go down to 60, and then you would hit for another 140, which would be 200.
I think if Venusaur had like 180 HP, I think he starts, maybe not, maybe he doesn't go straight to C tier, but I think what's really important is that what can two-shot him becomes very, very narrow. This is one of the tankiest Pokemon in the entire game, if not literally the tankiest Pokemon in the game, which I think adds some valuable, but he's not, and he's pretty good at two-shot and stuff, but I think he's not quite like A tier. Nothing like, he's not breaking the game, breaking the meta, anything like that. But this card absolutely is pretty good, and definitely will be very good in some. I think you'll throw this down and people will have a really hard time killing it because they won't be prepared. They're just all relying on Pikachu. And Pikachu, when you have Erica, you're healing 80 HP a turn. You know, you're heal at 50 and attacks heals for 30. They're like, oh shit, you know, like you're never getting through this thing.
You have two Ericas. Pikachu has to four-shot you.
Yeah, and Pikachu's dead 100 times over, right? So I think that this card is like surprisingly good, but it's still a stage 2 that requires 4 energy to do 100 damage, right? Let's not, I don't want to just talk about the good things. There's definitely downsides to the card as well, right? That's why it's in B tier and not above. Wigglytuff, this is like a very C tier Pokemon for me. The thing is, 80 damage for 3 energy is worse than Gengar, which is worse than Machamp, which is the worst card in the game. So that is not why you're using this card. It is 140 HP, which is worse than Gengar. It's worse than almost everything else on this list besides Marowak. It is a stage 1, so it's easier to get off, but it guarantees to put something to sleep, but sleep is a pretty weak mechanic. It's fine if you get lucky, but like this is a 50% chance of being just a bad attack that does 80 damage for 3 energy. 50% of the time it's really good, but I think if you take the average of it being like, it's just not good enough, you know. I think on average this is a 3 colorless energy to do 120 damage over 2 turns, like kind of thing, because half the time you're going to be able to hit twice without getting hit back, other times you're only going to be able to hit once. That's not maybe the right way to think about it, but overall it's just like I would never run this.
Yeah, and this card teaches you something really important, which is just because it's easy to get off doesn't mean it gets you off. That's right. An important inclination. That's
a life lesson right there. All right. I make sure I tell that my girlfriend every day. Okay, no, but yeah, this card it's pretty, like, it's a stage 1. There's nothing really keeping it back other than I think its numbers are not quite good enough. I don't think the upside of the sleep is enough to sacrifice the damage and to be worth 2 points when it does die with a relatively low HP. At least Marowak, like, sometimes just fucking smacks, you know. Sometimes he hits for 160. And it only takes 2 energy. That's a big relevant point. It's attacking a turn earlier. But yeah.
I would rather have 2 energy and forget the sleep. Like, get rid of the sleep. You do 80 for 2 energy.
And I actually think that would just be a better card, right? For sure. And it's not even close. Like, it definitely would be a better card. 3 energy is a lot to put into a card that you're expecting to kind of die. Like, you're not building your deck around this. You don't want to put 3 energy into a card that you're just going to be like, well, that was okay. You know, you want 3 energy, unless it's a water type and you just go all in with like a Lapras and get lucky. But yeah. All right. Finally, I think the last EX in the game is Zapdos. Zapdos, we are putting in the B tier. I think Zapdos is pretty darn decent, but he does have kind of like a low HP. I know he's a basic. He has more than Pikachu, less than Articuno. Being able to peck for 20 damage is like, I mean, sure, I guess. It's there. It's literally the only EX Pokemon with a move that's like on par with like a basic, like normal Pokemon, I feel like. That move sucks. But then when you get up to Thundering Hurricane for 3 energy, you flip 4 coins and you can do 50 damage for each one. So this could do upwards of 200 damage for 4 energy with no energy downside, but the downside is that it could hit for 0. You know, on average it hits for 100 for 3 energy. There's a lot of cards down here that hit for 100 for 3 energy or like less. It's not very good, but I think the upside combined with the lower treat cost, combined with actually having an attack, and this is, I feel like this is more just like a Pikachu best friend than anything. Like this is just like, it works good with Pikachu. You need basic Pokemon to put on your bench for Pikachu, and this is one of the better ones.
Yeah, and if you evaluated how good is it in the Pikachu deck, it's actually really good. It's an S tier Pokemon for the Pikachu deck because it's the best thing that you can lay on your bench early in the game behind a Pikachu. Because even if they bring it up, you know, with it doesn't have low HP where it gets one shot. You know what I mean? If they use a Sabrina on you, you can bring it up. It's easy enough to retreat back. The 1 energy 20 damage. Don't let them sell it like as if it's not a big deal, because lightning weakness is like the #1 weakness in the game because of flying. So it's like, let's look up towards the top. Like, what's weak to lightning?
Everything up here, yeah.
You know, everything up there is weak to lightning other than like Pikachu for at least the S and above. And then Blastoids also, right? Is that a lightning weakness?
Yep, it is lightning weakness. Yep.
Yeah,
Almost everything up here is weak to lightning, which is another reason Pikachu is good.
So being able to hit for 40 damage is impactful, right? So
yeah, I mean that's a Farfetch'd with double the HP, you know, and Farfetch'd is great.
Yeah, and really you're never purposely using this to use a 3 energy attack, but it is a failsafe when for some reason you can't get a second Pikachu online or even a first.
Yeah, it's basically like the 3 energy attacks. If you have your 1 Pikachu, you're not drawing your second one. You just start throwing your extra energy onto Zapdos, and then occasionally you're going to switch out because on average you do more damage than the Pikachu. However, I would always take the consistent 90 damage over the sometimes 200, but still, Zapdos can sometimes do some great numbers. But can I say what is fucking bullshit is Zapdos is weak to electricity. He takes 20 more damage from electricity. He is electricity. Doesn't even make sense. I know he's a bird. That's a flavor whiff for me right now. It's like, what are you talking about? He shoots lightning bolts. I don't know. I think that's kind of, I think it's weird.
Always, like him and Rayquaza, like all the flying Pokemon in the TCG have just like been weak to lightning. We don't know enough about the VGC or understand what's going on over there to know whether he's weak to lightning there. But I think flavor wise, it probably is accurate to what they normally do. But I also think it's important to say, like, each of the birds are not actually made of the material that they represent, right? They're physically alive beings with blood pumping through their veins, and then some of them on the outer edges, right? Like Moltres has flames on its skin, right, or feathers, but it's not made of fire. And same thing with, like, you know, there's ice on Articuno's wings, but it is not all made of ice. And Zapdos does have a fleshy part. It's not all lightning.
I know, but lightning touches its body.
Yeah, it shouldn't be weak to lightning.
It should have the Arcanine effect. It should, every time it uses a lightning attack, hit itself for 10 lightning damage, because it's like, if you're actually weak to it.
Like that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So we did go, this is our final list. We did go way over our time, but it's honestly, it's fine. This is like, I don't want to rush through this. I want to make sure we're explaining stuff. We got Moltres sitting up there on the throne. We've got pretty obvious things in the S tier. Again, if you can't attack on turn 1, I do think that it's potential for Articuno to go down. But the guaranteed wins on before they ever get their first turn, I think is going to bump it up to S. And then, yeah, I mean, Machamp is the worst card in the game. That's not true, but he's the worst EX in the game, probably for sure. Like, I would run Wigglytuff over it because at least Wigglytuff puts it to sleep. Doesn't die in one shot. Wigglytuff beats the shit out of Machamp. That's not true, but I think Wigglytuff being able to go in any deck is still better than I'm not putting either of these cards in my deck ever, so it doesn't matter. But
Yeah, and I do like the fact that like a card like Charizard that by itself not very good, still be in a meta deck, um, because of support, right? So like that's
mhm.
one of the nice things about the game is any of those cards down on the bottom with the right support in the future, but other than probably Arcanine because he's just a shittier Charizard, but like the rest of those cards could actually become relevant in a meta deck.
Yeah, even without buffs to Machamp, if you just make Brock able to put an energy on like any fighting type or something, like suddenly Machamp is good. Suddenly he's coming to line a whole turn earlier and hitting for 120 is going to be way better because it's going to be way more consistently on turn 3. Because again, you're only doing it on turn 3 if you're never putting energy on anything else and you're just sitting there like a punching bag with Snorlax that you can't get out of there. Like he's so bad for so many ways, but just putting one energy on him, suddenly it's a way better card. I mean, it might be B tier, bro. I mean, it might make the jump from C to B if you have Brock buff. But that I don't think you'd get that much better than that. Anyway,
I
yeah,
think he would be better than Venusaur if he had Brock, but like if Brock for some reason just targeted Machamp line Pokemon or something. But I also want, can we scroll up real quick because I want to make one last comment on Articuno because there are going to be Articuno haters who just don't understand. They have never got attacked turn 1 and donked for like no good reason because the other person only had a Squirtle out. But 12.5% of the time you get to attack for 80 damage on turn 1 when you draw Misty, right? I know there's like a bunch of connotation things, but when that happens, all right, when you look at A and below, none of those cards increase your win percentage by 12.5%, right? So it's like that by itself just puts it up in the S tier.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even though with how good Starmie is, Starmie doesn't have that potential. Starmie has to at least wait until your second turn, even if you Misty it, to start really doing damage, right? Because what the normal Staryu hits for like 20 or something, where this is game-winningly powerful, absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, the way tempo works is just so hard to come back from. Like even if I had Zapdos or something as my, active Pokemon and you turn 1 or turn 2, it doesn't even need to be turn 1. We overplay the turn 1, but even if on turn 2, when you have no energy on you, I hit you for 80, you now have to get out of the active spot or you give me 2 points on turn 3. Or sorry, turn 2, right? Yeah, turn 2. So like that's insane. Or at least if we're taking turns not the way that Pocket says it, because Pocket does turn 1 is the very first turn, and then when your opponent goes, it's turn 2, 3, 4. So when it has a mission that says turn 14, it really means the end of turn 7.
Yeah. And honestly, you can't even retreat against Articuno, man, because he just hits you in the back line anyway. Like he's just if you put a basic out and like even a Kangaskhan, you hit it for 80 and he retreats with some magic because he can't actually do that, you're still gonna hit him 2 more times and kill him just by happening to have him out there. Absolutely busted. So one quick thing I want to say, because I'm an idiot and I never realized this until like this last week, but there are 3 legendary birds. Arctic Uno is 1, Zapdos is 2, and Moltres is 3. It's Uno, dos, tres. And I am so stupid. I literally never knew that. Ever. How do I not realize that?
Then I'm dumber because he's the one who taught me that.
And you're a data analyst. All right. Look at the data. It's numbers. They're everywhere. They're in the cards.
I am an INTJ. My worst skill would be language assessment and English. So.
All right. So finally, before we leave here, our pocket poll section. We don't have any questions. Otherwise, we would make that earlier in the thing. But if you want to be part of our pocket poll, then go ahead and leave us a POLL. Come on, don't make it weird. Leave it in the comments down below. And yeah, just leave us questions and we'll take a look there. And for next week's podcast, we'll pull like some interesting questions and we'll talk about why we think what we think about and yada, yada, blah, blah. But that's all I had planned for today. Do you have anything you want to talk about?
I wanted to just bring up maybe like 3 quick things. Thank you for the person, like these are all comments. They're not really pocket poll, but they're adjacent. Thank you for the person who let us know that as cool as it is to be able to get different language cards, you can at any time change your language and have all your cards be another language. So that is something you can do if you want to.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We got corrected on the ×2 weakness versus the 20 weakness. They actually shifted that a long time ago, and I forgot all about that. So
Okay.
really, about as long as we've had not being able to attack on turn 1, we've also had 20-point weaknesses and resistances, and not, well, it was 30 at one point and then 20. So thank you for that clarification as well. And there was one more correction that we had that I'm just blanking on in this moment, but thank you. We really appreciate. We try our best to be accurate and to be, logical, and just kind of give you guys good information. I know a lot of it is our opinion, but we try to use pretty good reasoning for our opinions, and you don't have to agree with us. You just have to agree that we at least tried our best.
Yeah, and we haven't been professional Pokemon players for the last decade or whatever, So we're kind of taking this game in its own package, right? It's its own package. So sometimes when we make assumptions about old rules or stuff, we're going to be wrong. And maybe someone with insane Pokemon knowledge that they just know how things tend to go in like a really powerful meta. But I think for the most part, I mean, everyone seems to, for the most part, people seem to have agreed with our takes. I haven't heard anyone be like, this take is wrong. It's mostly, here are corrections to some minor mistakes that you made. But this is the video people will roast, if anything. We'll find out.
That's right. We're ready. Bring the haters.
We'll take them. We'll take them all. All right. We'll take every last one of them. All right. Are you ready for our outro?
I'm as ready as I get.
All right. Thank you, everyone. This has been the Team Pocket Podcast, and Team Pocket is blasting off again. Yeah!